Whoa, that is so cool, Rose said, staring at the projection of her, astonished that anyone could create something like that. Yeah, actually it is, the man replied, staring at the projection himself. You know, I often forget how cool this stuff is. I mean, I get so used to using it all, and after a while it just sort of becomes normal. And I forget how other people aren't so up on technology. But everything has its limitations, and it appears that the equipment that I brought wasn't really sufficient. I've run into some unexpected problems, the man said, still looking at the projection coming from his hand. What do you mean unexpected problems? Rose said. I thought you said the scanners did their job. Don't worry about it, you said, Rose announced, putting her hands on her hips, bending over and glaring at the man. Hey, don't get that way with me. It's not my fault you're weird. And yeah, I know, that's a big thing coming from a guy with a holographic projector coming out of his hand. But my weirdness does not decrease yours. What are you talking about? Rose replied. Look, I've taken detailed scans of countless members of your race, including your mother, even you back when you were a baby. Hell, even your father's original race. But the scans I got from you, well, they're wonky. I've got some theories, but I'll just explain it as it arises. As an issue. First and foremost, I might as well tell you what I do know, because the scans weren't a complete failure. They just didn't get all of the information I would have liked them to. And once again, I'll explain why when the problem arises. In conversation. We'll start out with the base level scans, he said, as suddenly the projection changed. Rose's outward exterior in it disappearing in favor of a light blue fluorescent appearance, in which you could see Rose, well, the inside of Rose, her skeleton, and even internal organs, and a number of things that she couldn't readily identify. She took biology at school. She knew the human body, at least basically, but these projections were showing things that weren't normal at all. For example, her skeleton didn't exactly look like a normal human being's. The bones had these weird striations to them, like patterns that ran the entire length of her skeleton. And there were organs that, well, shouldn't be there. Things that she didn't recognize. But then again, she had just found out that she's not actually a human. So, in a strange way, it did make sense. Okay, these are the base level internal scans. From what I could tell, your skeletal frame is just about what you'd expect from a mesh between your mother's race and your father's, picking up the strongest characteristics from both and balancing them out. So, your skeleton's gonna be stronger than your mother's due to your father, but also maintain much of the flexibility that your mother's does, along with attaining a decrease in overall weight. Your father's race actually had much heavier bones that were stronger and far more resilient to impact and breakage, but your mother's race had much more flexible bones and resisted breakage in a different way. Rather than breaking, they would just bend, which gave them a resilience all their own. Your bones are somewhere in between. It's a nice balance. It should give you the best of both of them. Maybe not to the heightened extents that they had, but still very good. Much better than a human's, actually. As far as organs go, as expected by your diet, you inherited your father's internal organ systems, capable of intaking large amounts of protein, processing them rapidly, and transferring them into physical energy in the form of a highly concentrated protein compound the man said as the projection zoomed in on an organ, one of the ones that Rose had noted wasn't human, located somewhere in her abdomen. Other than that, your other internal organs seemed to be just what you'd expect. I thought maybe your processing gland would be a bit smaller than your father's, but for a strange reason, it's actually larger. I don't know why. It doesn't seem to fit, but then again, you don't actually have human genetics, so I suppose it's possible that the establishing of genetic markers and passing on of specific traits works a bit differently with your race. And for whatever reason, your genetic structure decided to enhance that feature rather than decreasing it or trying to balance it out. Next thing on the list is your hands, he said, as the projection shifted, beginning to hold up its hands as the projection zoomed in on them, showing them in greater detail. Here we can see that you've inherited your father's thorn proteins. This is how your father's people were able to grow thorns, so to speak. Here in the tips of your fingers, he said, directing Rose's attention to some highlighted segments that began to glow a yellowish color. Here in these segments of your hands, you build up a specific protein, a compound that your race makes, and then stores in large amounts at the point of projection. And once they become active, you'll be able to produce thorns. By the look of this, you'll most likely be able to produce hardened nails. They seem to be attached to your nail beds, so the chances are your nails themselves will be the weapons, extending out, becoming long and hard. The protein compound exists as a liquid that filters its way into the cells of your fingernails and then hardens once it reaches the outside. I can also see some storage spaces here, he said, highlighting some other segments purple. These are usually where specific compounds are stored. In the case of your father's race, whatever toxin they were using to poison or paralyze their prey. So you most likely will have inherited the ability to do the same and apply this substance to your nails once they're extended. Unfortunately, as of what compound, I can't really tell you. I should be able to tell you, but once again, you're a weird kid. What do you mean? Rose said. And we've arisen to it already. And since this is gonna become a trend, I might as well explain it now, he said, as the projection zoomed back out to Rose's full form. Look, I've taken countless scans of your people, the ones you come from, and humans and countless other races. Believe me, there are some doozies out there. But this is the first time I've run into this problem. Every biological organism produces a field of energy all of its own. Usually this field is slight and fairly manageable. But the people of the Eternal Bloom actually have a much stronger field of energy than other people, or other races, so to speak. I'm pretty sure it stems from their ability to absorb ambient energy like sunlight. They actually aren't aware of it themselves, but they actually absorb a fair amount of ambient energy from other things in nature as well. The air and water that they drink, even the ground that they stand on. They absorb small particles of energy from all of it, little charges from everything they come in contact with, as if nature itself just likes to give them energy. It's kind of weird, a unique trait of your people, and this gives them a much higher bioenergy signature than other races. For example, here's a projection of your mother, he said, as a projection appeared right beside Rose, and it was her mother in perfect high detail, the same as her. Suddenly, there was a golden glow that seemed to emerge around her inside the projection. This golden glow that you see right here is Well, it's a visual representation of the field of energy that your mother and everyone in her race produces. It's already about 30 times that of any normal human being, and contributes a great deal to, well, their overall abilities. But this field of energy does present some problems in terms of scanning. That field of energy actually hazes things out. In other words, the weaker a form of energy is when it tries to come in contact with her or pass through her, the more her own field of energy repels it, blocks it out. Before, it wasn't really a problem. The strength of my scans are strong enough to counterbalance that, so I can still get the in-depth scans and information that I need. But, he said, if you'll direct your attention to the scan of you, Rose. As she looked at it, the duplicate of her suddenly began to emanate a massive red glow all around it. It was huge, completely overshadowing her mother's. And here you see the problem. Your energy levels, well, they're like 10 times your mom's, easy. With the only real question being whether it's a result of your bloom and a simple natural part of the process of you getting older and developing as a woman, and the levels will subside back to normal afterwards. I never got to scan anyone during their bloom, so I can't be the judge. And your mother's race doesn't exactly use technology, so I can't rely on her to tell me. They prefer to do things naturally, he said, somewhat snidely. But regardless of which it is, the energy you're producing is just too much. A high percentage of the energy wavelengths that we send through you in the scan, well, they're just not penetrating. Your natural energy field is forcing them back, bouncing them away. They can't get a stable scan. So, while I was able to get information on your basic anatomy, physical traits and characteristics that I could see, many of the more in-depth scans that are meant to analyze the compounds that your body produces, chemical makeups, genetic templates, and things like that. All of the scans are basically garbage. There's too much hazing them out to actually rely on the information. Because believe me, when it comes down to chemical compounds and genetic alignments, the details matter. Even a small change can have drastic effects. I misplace one letter inside your genetic code when I'm giving you the description, and you could completely misunderstand or not know what your powers do, have the wrong idea. I'd rather give you no information than wrong information. But suffice it to say, that covers the basic problem that we're going to run into multiple times here.